The night Ava Monroe walked into the Vail Foundation charity gala, the room did not fall silent because she was important. It fell silent because she looked impossible. She was 7 years old, soaked from the Chicago rain, wearing a faded blue dress that looked too thin for winter and shoes so worn that one silver strap barely held together. In her small hands, she carried a cracked wooden music box, pressing it against her chest like it was the last living piece of her mother. Around her, diamonds glittered beneath golden chandeliers. Men in black suits paused with crystal glasses in their hands. Women in silk gowns looked down at the child as if poverty itself had stepped onto their polished marble floor. The guests did not see a frightened little girl. They saw an interruption, a stain, a reminder of the world they paid guards to keep outside. But Ava did not turn back. Outside, black cars lined the entrance like funeral shadows. Security guards stood beneath the cold rain, speaking into hidden earpieces, while cameras followed every movement near the doors. This was not just a charity event. It was a gathering of Chicago's most dangerous names, hidden behind donations, expensive smiles, and clean white tablecloths. From the balcony above, Dominic Vail watched everything. Dominic was not the kind of man who showed surprise. At 36, he ruled the Vail family with a silence colder than violence. Rivals feared him because he never gave second chances. Allies respected him because he never trusted anyone completely. And children were never allowed near his world. Not because he hated them, but because innocence had no place in a house built on blood. Yet the little girl below held his attention. Ava had not come searching for money, shelter, or pity. Her mother, Lila Monroe, had died 3 nights earlier in a small apartment with locked windows and unpaid bills stacked beside her bed. Before her final breath, Lila had given Ava only one instruction: find Dominic Vail, because he was the only person dangerous enough to save her. Ava did not understand what that meant. She only knew her mother had been afraid for years. When a wealthy woman whispered about Ava's dirty shoes, Ava lowered her eyes but did not move. When a man laughed quietly and called her someone's mistake, she tightened her fingers around the music box. Something about her stillness unsettled the room more than tears would have. Then Dominic saw it. On the corner of the cracked music box, beneath chipped paint and dust, was a silver wolf symbol. It was not decoration. It was a private mark his family used for messages meant to survive betrayal. Dominic's face hardened. Ava did not know the man staring down at her was her father. Dominic did not know the child standing beneath his balcony carried the blood of the woman he believed had betrayed him 8 years ago. He ordered his guards to bring her forward. And when Dominic opened the music box, he found a blood-stained note with his real name written inside. The blood on the note had dried into a dark brown stain, but the name written beneath it struck Dominic Vail harder than any fresh wound. No one in Chicago called him by that name anymore. To the city, he was Dominic Vail, the ruthless head of the Vail family, a man whose name could empty restaurants and silence courtrooms. But the note carried the name he had buried 8 years ago, the name only Lila Monroe had spoken when she still believed there was a human being beneath his power. Ava stood in front of him, small and dripping rainwater onto the marble floor, watching his face with a calmness that did not belong to a child. Most grown men trembled when Dominic looked at them. Ava did not. She studied him with the same steady eyes Lila once had, the kind of eyes that made lies feel useless. That was the first thing that unsettled him. The second was the warning hidden in the note. Lila had not run from Dominic. She had been hiding from someone close to him, someone inside the Vail bloodline, someone powerful enough to turn his own house into a cage. For years, Dominic had believed Lila betrayed him, sold his secrets, and vanished with another man while his enemies circled him like wolves. That belief had hardened him. It had made him crueler, colder, and easier to fear. Now one dead woman's note threatened to tear that truth apart. Ava's story only deepened the crack. She had grown up in small apartments with broken locks, and neighbors whose names never lasted long. She had changed schools so often that teachers stopped feeling permanent. Every night, she had watched her mother check the windows, push furniture against doors, and listen to cars slowing outside. Ava had never understood why they lived like fugitives. She only knew fear had been part of bedtime. Before Lila died, she left her daughter 3 things: the cracked music box, Dominic's name, and one warning that Ava must never trust any man wearing the Vale family ring. Dominic looked down at his own hand. The silver wolf ring rested on his finger, heavy and familiar, the symbol of everything he ruled. To Ava, it was not power. It was danger. Dominic did not let emotion touch his face, but his body betrayed him in smaller ways. His fingers tightened around the note. His breathing slowed. His eyes darkened when Ava's quiet memories reached the final days of Lila's life. Then Ava lifted her hand to wipe rain from her sleeve, and Dominic saw the crescent-shaped birthmark near her wrist. His mother had once told him the mark appeared only in the true Vale bloodline. For one breath, the room seemed to disappear. Dominic rejected the thought instantly, because believing it would mean something unforgivable. It would mean Lila had carried his child while he hated her. It would mean his daughter had lived in fear while he sat on a throne built above her suffering. He ordered his private doctor brought in for a secret blood test. But before the test could happen, Ava looked past Dominic's shoulder and saw a man in the hallway wearing the same ring her mother had warned her about. Ava's small body went still before anyone else understood why. At the end of the hallway stood Victor Hale, Dominic Vale's uncle, dressed in a flawless black suit with a warm smile that made wealthy men relax and frightened men obey. To the guests, Victor looked like elegance, age, and loyalty. To Ava, he looked like every nightmare her mother had tried to outrun. For the first time since entering the gala, Ava stepped behind Dominic. That one movement changed the air around him. Dominic did not turn quickly. He did not show alarm, but his eyes moved from Ava's pale face to Victor's calm expression, and something dangerous began connecting in his mind. Lila had warned her daughter about a man wearing the Vale family ring. Victor wore one proudly. Lila had spent years hiding. Victor had spent those same years quietly gaining influence over half the Mafia Council, always pretending loyalty while waiting for weakness. And Ava, this poor little girl with worn shoes and Lila's eyes, was not just a lost child anymore. She was evidence. If Ava truly carried Dominic's blood, then his bloodline was secure. His place at the top of the Vale family could not be challenged easily. Victor would never inherit control through doubt, scandal, or silence. That gave him a reason to bury Lila's truth before it ever reached Dominic. Dominic ordered the gala locked down. The doors were sealed. Guards moved through the corridors. Guests stiffened beneath the chandeliers, suddenly reminded that behind the charity banners and champagne glasses, they were standing inside the Lion's house. Victor remained calm. His smile never cracked. He made Ava look like an intruder with nothing but her poverty as proof against her. The rich guests were eager to believe him. It was easier to doubt a child in a faded dress than question a powerful man with polished shoes and old blood. That was the cruelty Dominic noticed most. Ava had nothing, so they decided she must be lying. But innocence has a strange way of remembering what powerful men think they erased. Ava remembered a black car parked outside their apartment on rainy nights. She remembered her mother crying after opening envelopes with no return address. She remembered a man stepping from the shadows with a gold cane tapping against the sidewalk. Dominic's gaze lowered. Victor Hale owned a gold cane. While the room watched Victor's performance, Dominic's private doctor moved quietly through a side chamber. Ava's blood sample was taken under the excuse of checking her health. Dominic gave his own sample in silence, without allowing even his closest men to see the weight of that decision. For the first time in years, Dominic feared the answer. Later, Ava was placed in a guarded room upstairs, wrapped in a clean blanket, the music box resting beside her pillow. Downstairs, Victor sent one loyal man to the servant corridor with orders to destroy the test before truth could return. Near midnight, the lock on Ava's door turned slowly. The door opened, and Ava woke to see a gloved hand reaching for the music box. Ava did not scream when the gloved hand reached through the darkness. That was what made the moment more terrifying. A normal child would have cried, called for help, or frozen beneath the blanket. Ava moved with the quiet instinct of someone who had been taught fear before she was taught safety. Her small fingers slid beneath the pillow, pulling the cracked music box closer to her chest, hiding it the way Lila Monroe had trained her to hide anything that mattered. The intruder stepped deeper into the room. Before he could reach the bed, the door slammed against the wall. Dominic Vale entered like a shadow with violence behind it. In seconds, the man was thrown to the floor, pinned beneath Dominic's cold fury, while Ava sat upright, silent and pale, clutching the only thing her mother had left behind. The intruder refused to speak. No threat moved him. No pain opened his mouth. But Dominic did not need a confession once he tore open the man's jacket and found Victor Hale's private symbol burned into the inner lining. Victor had made his first mistake. Ava watched Dominic carefully, waiting to see if he would take the music box away like everyone else had tried to do. Instead, Dominic stepped back. That small act reached her more deeply than any promise could have. For the first time, she trusted him enough to show him what her mother had hidden. Inside the music box was a secret compartment. So thin it looked like part of the wood. Ava pressed a tiny metal latch, and a folded photograph slipped into her palm. Dominic took it slowly. The picture showed Lila Monroe, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a white hospital blanket. Lila looked exhausted, terrified, and heartbreakingly alive. On the back, written in faded ink, was a message explaining that Ava had been born during a violent storm while Dominic was fighting a war he never knew had been designed to keep him away. Dominic did not cry. Men like him had trained their faces into stone long before grief could reach them. But his silence changed. It grew heavier, deeper, filled with the kind of pain that did not need sound. The truth began unfolding with brutal clarity. Dominic and Lila had once planned to leave the Mafia world behind, but Victor had staged a betrayal, making Dominic believe Lila had sold his secrets to his enemies. Lila had run because Victor threatened to kill her unborn child if she contacted Dominic. Dominic finally understood that his life had not been protected by family. It had been poisoned by it. Then the blood test results arrived. But the doctor was missing. Dominic's men found the lab burned, the records destroyed, and the doctor's car abandoned near the river. Ava no longer felt safe inside the mansion, yet she noticed the changes around her. Warmer food, stronger guards, a repaired dress, and the music box returned polished but untouched. Dominic later discovered the doctor had sent one file before disappearing. The file contained the words 99.9% match. But before Dominic could read the name, the mansion lost power. The mansion fell into darkness, so completely that even the walls seemed to stop breathing. 1 second, Dominic Vale was staring at the unfinished DNA file. The next, every light vanished, every alarm died, and the great house that had survived police raids, enemy attacks, and family wars became a silent trap. Dominic did not need confirmation. Only Victor Hale had the arrogance to strike this deep inside the Vale estate. Ava stood near the desk, clutching the polished music box against her chest. In the blackness, she looked smaller than ever, but Dominic no longer saw a mystery standing in front of him. He no longer saw evidence, suspicion, or a possible connection to Lila Monroe. He saw blood. Sometimes fatherhood does not arrive through proof. Sometimes it arrives through terror. In the second a man realizes he would burn his whole empire before letting one child be taken. Dominic moved to Ava and lowered himself to her level. The feared Mafia boss. The man grown criminals refused to look in the eye, knelt in front of a little girl with rain-washed memories and trembling hands. He did not make a speech. He did not offer soft promises he had never learned how to keep. His body became the promise as he placed himself between Ava and the door. Then his estate erupted. Glass shattered downstairs. Gunfire cracked through the west wing. Heavy boots stormed the marble floors as Victor's men entered with one purpose: capture Ava and recover the music box before the truth could reach the council. Dominic's loyal captain, Elias Creed, appeared through a hidden panel behind the study shelves. He guided Dominic and Ava into an underground tunnel built beneath the mansion generations earlier, a passage meant for kings of crime who fear betrayal more than death. They moved fast through the narrow stone corridor. Ava's breath shook, but she kept running. Behind them, shouting grew louder. Halfway through the tunnel, the music box slipped from her hands and struck the floor, opening just enough for its broken melody to echo through the dark. Dominic stopped for one deadly second. That music box held Lila's secrets. It held proof, memory, and the only path to destroying Victor's lies. The old Dominic would have turned back for it. The old Dominic protected leverage before people. But Ava stumbled ahead, terrified and exposed. Dominic chose her. He swept Ava into his arms and kept moving, leaving the music box behind in the shadows. In that moment, Ava understood why her mother had sent her to him. Dominic was not safe, not gentle, not untouched by violence. He was simply the only man dangerous enough to fight the monsters who had hunted them. By dawn, Victor's attack failed, but one betrayal remained. A trusted guard had fed him every secret for years, and Victor escaped with part of the DNA file. Dominic decided to face the Mafia Council anyway. As the council hour approached, Ava touched Dominic's sleeve and whispered that she remembered where her mother had hidden the original proof. By sunrise, Ava led Dominic Vale away from the mansion of marble floors and armed guards to an old rental house on the edge of Milwaukee, where the paint peeled from the porch and winter air slipped through cracks in the windows. The house was small, poor, and painfully quiet. For Dominic, that silence was worse than accusation. He stepped inside and saw the life his daughter had survived while he ruled from rooms built with blood money. There were no chandeliers here, no guards at every door, no silver trays or polished floors, only cheap curtains, a broken heater, and the heavy feeling of a woman who had spent her final years hiding from men with his last name. Ava moved through the house carefully, touching familiar walls like they were memories she was afraid to wake. In the kitchen doorway, she showed Dominic a row of pencil marks where Lila had measured her height every birthday. Beside each mark, Lila had written the date in small, neat handwriting. Dominic stared at them longer than he meant to. Each line was a year he had missed. Each inch was proof that Ava had grown up while he hated a lie. The most painful part was not that Lila had hidden Ava from him. It was realizing Ava had spent every birthday with an empty space where her father should have been. In the bedroom, Dominic found a shoebox beneath the bed. Inside were handmade cards Ava had drawn over the years, all addressed to a father she had never met. Some had crooked hearts. Some had stick figures. One showed a small girl standing beside a tall man with dark hair. Even though Ava had never known what Dominic looked like, that broke something in him. Ava watched his face change, and for the first time, she seemed to understand that power did not protect a man from pain. Even dangerous men could be wounded by the truth. Then Ava remembered the floorboard. In Lila's old room, beneath a loose plank near the closet, they found an envelope wrapped in plastic. Inside were hospital records, a photograph of Dominic and Lila from before everything collapsed, and a letter written in Lila's hand. The letter explained that Victor had threatened to kill Ava if Lila ever contacted Dominic. It also revealed that Lila had tried to send proof again and again, but every message had been intercepted before it reached him. Then Dominic reached the final page. Lila had named a second traitor, Cassandra Vale, Dominic's own sister, the woman who had raised him after their parents died, the woman who had stood beside him at every funeral, every war, every family meeting. According to Lila, Cassandra had helped Victor because she believed Dominic's daughter would make him too powerful to control. Dominic folded the letter with shaking hands. Ava did not step away when he moved closer to protect her. Then engines growled outside the abandoned house. Dominic looked through the cracked window as Cassandra stepped from the first black car, holding the missing doctor at gunpoint. Cassandra Vale did not deny the truth when Dominic saw her outside the Milwaukee house. That was the part that wounded him deepest. She stood beside the black car with the missing doctor held at gunpoint, her expression calm, almost disappointed, as if Dominic had discovered a family secret he was never mature enough to understand. She had helped Victor hide Ava because a daughter would have made Dominic impossible control. A blood heir meant loyalty. A blood heir meant legacy. A blood heir meant the council would never dare question his throne. Victor had not simply buried Lila's truth. He had turned Ava into a weapon. By nightfall, Dominic brought everything before the Mafia Council. The hospital records, Lila's letter, the photograph from before the betrayal, and the partial DNA result Victor had failed to destroy. Ava stood beside him in a clean dress, still small, still pale, still holding the repaired music box as if it carried her mother's heartbeat. Around her sat men who had ordered deaths over dinner and destroyed families for territory. Yet somehow, the little girl frightened them more than a loaded gun. Her existence threatened bloodlines, power agreements, and years of hidden corruption. Victor understood that fear and used it. He painted Ava as a street child with a convenient story. He reminded the council of her poor clothes, unknown childhood, missing records, and dead mother. The insult moved through the room quietly, crueler than open violence. To them, Ava looked like she had come from nowhere, and powerful men always found it easier to doubt the powerless. Dominic let the cruelty reveal itself before he destroyed it. He made the council look at Ava, not as a rumor, but as innocent blood their world had abandoned. He showed them the hospital stamp. He placed Lila's final letter on the table. He laid down the photograph of himself and Lila before Victor's lies turned love into hatred. Then he revealed the proof no one expected. The music box had not only carried memories. Hidden beneath its mechanism was a tiny recording device Lila had protected for years. When Elias Creed opened the compartment and played the recording, Cassandra's old confession filled the council chamber. It revealed how Victor staged Lila's betrayal, how Cassandra intercepted every message, and how both of them forced a pregnant woman to run, while Dominic was kept blind. The room changed. Men who had doubted Ava lowered their eyes. Others turned toward Victor with the cold disgust reserved for someone who had broken family law. Cassandra's face finally cracked, but Victor's rage came faster than judgment. He moved before anyone expected it. Victor grabbed Ava and pulled her against him, turning the entire council into statues. Dominic's fury rose like fire, but he forced himself still. One wrong move could hurt the child he had only just found. Ava's music box slipped from her hands and opened on the floor. Lila's old lullaby filled the chamber. For one painful second, Dominic froze. That second was enough for Victor to drag Ava toward the underground garage, where Dominic already knew explosives had been planted. Dominic Vale entered the underground garage not as the king of Chicago's most feared family, but as a father chasing a child he had never been allowed to hold. Smoke crawled across the concrete floor. Red emergency lights flashed against rows of black cars, turning every windshield into a sheet of blood-colored glass. Somewhere above, the council chamber shook with panic, but Dominic's entire world had narrowed to one sight: Ava trapped in Victor Hale's grip near the exit. Victor used the little girl like a shield, forcing Dominic to feel every lost year at once. His expression carried the cruel satisfaction of a man who believed love made powerful people weak. He wanted Dominic broken by guilt. He wanted him to understand that in their world, power always demanded blood, and tonight that blood would be Ava's. But Victor had misunderstood the man standing in front of him. The old Dominic would have killed first and mourned later. The old Dominic would have chosen revenge because revenge had always been easier than grief. This Dominic stayed still, studying Ava's fear, Victor's hand, the distance to the exit, and the blinking charge wired near the wall. Behind the smoke, Elias Creed worked desperately to disable the explosives. One charge went dark, then another, but the final device remained active near the garage doors, its red light pulsing like a heartbeat counting down to disaster. Dominic stepped forward slowly, not to attack, but to pull Victor's attention away from Ava. He let Victor believe he had won. He let the hatred fill the space between them. Then, in one sharp movement, Dominic created the opening Ava needed. Ava ran. Victor triggered the final device. The explosion tore through the garage with a force that shattered headlights and cracked concrete pillars. Fire alarms screamed. Smoke swallowed the ceiling. Cars rocked on their tires as Ava fell to ground, and Dominic threw himself over her before the blast could reach her fragile body. For a moment, there was only heat, darkness, and the sound of a little girl crying beneath the weight of the man who had chosen her over everything. Victor was pulled from the wreckage alive, broken and powerless. Cassandra was stripped of her name and locked away from the empire she had tried to steal. Dominic survived, but the injury left a scar across his ribs that no tailored suit could fully hide. Weeks later, before the remaining council, Dominic publicly recognized Ava Monroe as his daughter. The Vale Empire did not become gentle, but it changed. Dominic ruled with a new truth beside him. He had something more dangerous than power now. He had someone worth living for. Ava placed a repaired music box on his desk, finally letting Lila's truth rest. But that night, while studying an old photo of Lila and Dominic, Ava found one final hidden message inside the music box, revealing that Lila had discovered another child connected to the Vale bloodline before she died.